I've been in the courtroom for much of this trial, and the testimony has been absolutely explosive. But something prosecutors and the defense are going to need to do when it comes time for closing arguments is to really put the pieces together. We've heard from many different witnesses, and they've testified about many different aspects of the case. They've also testified about a lot of different time periods. Remember, this case is alleging that Diddy has been committing crimes over the course of 20 years. Because of that, the prosecutors are really going to have to put all those puzzle pieces together and explain how this all fits into the charges as they are in the indictment. Brianna Bongolin's testimony was a huge win for the defense. She testified that Combs actually dangled her off of a balcony, something that the prosecutors had been referring to as the balcony incident. And so this was really central to prosecutors' case, trying to show that Combs is a violent individual who engages in this type of conduct. However, on cross-examination, her testimony really fell apart. The defense was able to cut away at her timeline. They were able to show that when she testified she was being dangled over a balcony in Los Angeles, Combs was actually performing a concert in New Jersey and staying in a hotel in New York. This destroyed her credibility, and that, I don't believe, will be lost on the jurors. Because her testimony had so many credibility problems, it could actually make the jurors question other prosecution witnesses. And will they think, if her testimony was so uncredible, what about what we heard on cross-examination to some of the other critical prosecution witnesses? That testimony was a huge win for the defense. The prosecution started strong with Cassie Ventura's testimony, and of course that horrible 2016 video where Combs is seen beating her in the hallway of the Intercontinental Hotel. Her testimony and the aspects relating to the force, psychological, physical abuse that she suffered was really helpful for the prosecutors and is central to their case. Not only was her testimony important with respect to the sex trafficking charges, it also set the tone for the rest of the prosecution's case. Basically, prosecutors want the jury to look at all of the other evidence and all of the other witnesses through the prism of Cassie Ventura. And they did that very successfully by starting out with Cassie's testimony. Another win for prosecutors was some of Capricorn Clark's testimony. She talked about an incident where she was held for over 24 hours and a lie detector test was administered. That's the basis for the racketeering part of the charge, kidnapping. Also, the Molotov cocktail in Kid Cudi's car, that's arson. Those are all predicate crimes that prosecutors need to establish. And showing that pattern of criminality was very effective for the prosecution. Although there were never any charges relating to the Molotov cocktail incident, and the defense really tried to show that there's no proof to link Combs or his associates with that incident, the testimony by Kid Cudi was really, really effective in creating that link, which the jurors will ultimately determine was Combs involved with the Molotov cocktail. And would that serve as the basis for racketeering activity, specifically arson? That pattern of conduct that's being presented to the jurors has been very effective for the prosecution. Although this happened without the jurors in the room, the judge admonished the defense team because Combs was actually looking at jurors, according to the judge, and nodding his head vigorously. The judge thought this was actually very disruptive and even went a step further. He said that it was trying to influence or intimidate the jurors, and that if Combs kept up with this conduct, he was going to be out of the courtroom for the rest of the trial. So his defense team is absolutely now directing him to stay in line. This is a rare occurrence because defendants have the right to be in court and to face their accusers. They also have the right to be engaged in their trial, but that can go too far. And so the judge gave a final warning. It was the third time, and he said the next time this happens, Diddy is out of the courtroom. The prosecution has not finished their case yet, so trial's unpredictable, anything can happen. The transportation to engage in prostitution charge was really effectively done by the prosecutors, and in my opinion, that one is pretty much proven. It's a very simple charge that requires showing that individuals traveled over state lines in order to engage in prostitution. We heard about freak-offs all over the country and even internationally. So that one, prosecutors have hit the ball over the net. With respect to sex trafficking, Combs is facing 2 counts of sex trafficking, which requires engaging in commercial sex through force, fraud, or coercion. With respect to Cassie Ventura, the case is really, really good for prosecutors at this point. They've shown the force. They've shown the influence he had over her. They met when they were young. A lot of these aspects are going to speak to that element of coercion. The second charge of sex trafficking relates to Jane. She's been testifying for the past 5 days. And quite frankly, her testimony on cross-examination is really falling apart. There are a lot of credibility issues, and there's significant differences between Jane and Cassie Ventura. And a lot of that is coming out through text messages and communications that Combs and Jane had during the time they were dating, which was very recently. It also came out that Combs is still paying for Jane's $10,000 a month apartment, that they entered into a love contract in 2023 where they agreed upon their respective roles in the relationship. All of that is going to undercut the argument of force, fraud, and coercion. And the defense is doing a great job at chipping away at that. So her case, when it comes to sex trafficking, is not as strong. The prosecutors have not wrapped up their case yet, so there's still more to come, and anything can happen at trial. But as of now, it's really going to be the jury's factual finding about whether or not Cassie and Jane were subjected to force, fraud, and coercion as opposed to a very bad domestic abuse relationship. So that's something the jury will decide. As far as racketeering, to me, the prosecutors have not gotten there yet. They've shown a pattern of racketeering activity. That's 2 crimes that were committed within 10 years of each other. They've shown that there was racketeering activity. And if the jury believes that was affiliated with Combs and his associates, then that aspect will be fulfilled. But what prosecutors have not established yet, in my view, is the criminal enterprise. We have not heard from any witnesses to say, what are the means and methods of this enterprise? What is it? How does it work? What are its goals? None of that testimony has come on the record. So for me, the racketeering charge has fallen short. There has been so much interest in this case, and it has not changed over the past 5 weeks. The courtroom is packed every day. There's an overflow courtroom. It's packed every day. And outside the court, you have so many people blogging, doing TikToks, and documenting what is happening in this trial. The public interest is astounding, and it's not slowing down. We're about to embark on the defense side of the case, and that's going to be something everyone will want to see. Prosecutors have said that they're running ahead of schedule, and they're actually not going to call all the witnesses that they identified on their witness list. That means they're making a strategic decision. They believe they have what they need for their case in chief. But that's not uncommon. Oftentimes, witnesses are named, and then you make a decision as the trial goes on whether or not to call them. So prosecutors are going to wrap their case up a little earlier than expected. But that doesn't mean the trial is going to end soon, because the defense has said that they may actually call some of the witnesses prosecutors decided not to. We can only opine as to who these individuals might be. I'm speculating that they will likely be individuals who were involved in Combs' various businesses, speaking specifically to the aspect of racketeering. And the prosecution isn't calling these witnesses, but the defense might use them. So that says these witnesses could really go either way. This is all up to the jury at this point to determine whether prosecutors fulfilled their obligation to prove each charge beyond a reasonable doubt. And there's a lot of different outcomes. There could be what's called a mixed verdict. There could be convictions on some charges and acquittals on others. There could be hung jury. A hung jury could be on one or all of the charges. Each charge is going to be looked at individually, and the jury will make a determination based on the jury instructions, which lay out the elements of the case applied to the evidence, whether or not prosecutors met their burden. One open question for me is whether we're going to hear from Christina Coram. This was Combs' chief of staff, nicknamed KK. We've heard a lot about KK throughout the whole course of the trial. She continues to come up in a lot of the witness testimony, and she's always identified as somebody who's engaged in some of the alleged racketeering activity. Prosecutors have identified her as a co-conspirator. So her testimony has yet to be seen. We don't have the witness list for next week, but I think prosecutors may end with her testimony, and maybe that's what wraps up the racketeering charge.